If anyone had told me that I would spend my Thursday afternoon watching a human female revolutionize apex predator psychology using discarded shipping materials, I would have recommended immediate psychiatric evaluation and possibly emergency brain surgery. Yet here I was, senior behavioral specialist Nix Starweaver, documenting what was either the greatest breakthrough in xenobiological history or the most elaborate practical joke the cosmos had ever conceived. The human responsible for this reality-defying spectacle was named Hazel Moonbeam. Yes, really. Humans apparently named their offspring after random combinations of plants and celestial phenomena, as if they were trying to claim ownership of nature itself through creative baby naming. Hazel stood barely 5 feet 4, had curly auburn hair that seemed to defy several laws of physics, and possessed the kind of relentless cheerfulness that made seasoned researchers update their life insurance policies. She was also, according to our comprehensive psychological evaluation, completely fearless in ways that suggested either advanced enlightenment or severe brain damage. The creature at the center of this impossibility was designation RB7, though the staff had privately nicknamed him Destructor for reasons that became obvious to anyone who spent more than 30 seconds in his presence. RB7 was a juvenile Razorback, standing 4 feet tall despite being only 6 months old, covered in armored plating that could deflect plasma fire, and equipped with retractable spines that could pierce reinforced titanium. His jaw could crush starship components, and his temperament suggested he viewed the entire universe as a collection of obstacles requiring immediate demolition. Oh, and he was completely, utterly, absolutely untamable. Our facility, the Galactic Institute for Dangerous Species Management, specialized in dealing with apex predator juveniles whose behavioral problems exceeded the capabilities of standard containment protocols. We had successfully managed cubs from 47 different species, each one presenting unique challenges that required specialized approaches, custom equipment, and teams of experts working around the clock. RB7 had defeated every single method we had developed over 3 decades of research. He had destroyed 43 different containment systems, injured 17 specialists despite our most advanced safety protocols, and consumed enough resources to fund a small space station. Our behavioral modification attempts had ranged from positive reinforcement through rare delicacies to negative conditioning using electromagnetic fields. We had tried environmental manipulation, pheromone therapy, sonic conditioning, and even experimental neural interfaces. Nothing worked. RB7 remained a 4-foot tornado of destruction, with the attitude of someone who had been personally insulted by the existence of order in the universe. This cub is demonstrating resistance patterns that exceed our theoretical frameworks, Dr. Atlas Stormwind had reported during our latest crisis meeting. Atlas was a Zentoran male whose 6 arms allowed him to operate multiple restraint systems simultaneously, making him our facility's most experienced, dangerous species handler. His aggression levels are increasing rather than stabilizing. His destructive behaviors are becoming more sophisticated, and he appears to be developing strategies specifically designed to counter our containment protocols. Director Orion Ironclad, our facility commander, had been cycling through stress colors that indicated his species was approaching complete nervous breakdown. Orion was a Korthani whose ancestors had been prey animals, which explained his entirely reasonable terror of anything with more teeth than a herbivore. We're facing potential facility closure if we can't demonstrate progress within the next evaluation cycle, he had announced, his voice climbing toward frequencies that made our structural supports vibrate ominously. The Galactic Council is questioning whether Razorback cubs can be safely integrated into civilized society, or if they should be classified as permanently hazardous and managed accordingly. The managed accordingly option involved measures that nobody wanted to discuss but everyone understood, meant either permanent isolation or more final solutions. That's when Dr. Hazel Moonbeam had volunteered for what everyone assumed would be either the shortest consultation on record or the most spectacular research facility disaster in galactic history. Hazel arrived at our facility with a single suitcase, unlimited confidence in her theories about play-based behavioral modification, and what appeared to be a complete disregard for basic survival instincts. Her credentials were impressive. Xenobiology doctorate from Earth's most prestigious university, 5 years of fieldwork with dangerous species, and recommendations from colleagues who described her as remarkably gifted at understanding nonverbal communication patterns. What her credentials failed to mention was her absolute refusal to follow established safety protocols when they interfered with what she called authentic interspecies connection. "You're approaching this backwards," she had told Director Ironclad during her initial consultation, reviewing our comprehensive files on RB7's behavioral patterns. "You're treating him like a problem that needs solving instead of a child who needs understanding." "He's an apex predator juvenile," Orion had protested, his stress colors shifting to shades that suggested impending cardiovascular failure. "Razorback cubs don't need understanding. They need containment, conditioning, and careful management to prevent them from developing into weapons of mass destruction." "He's a baby," Hazel had replied with the kind of patient correction that suggested she had been having this conversation for years. "A scared, confused, probably lonely baby who has been surrounded by adults treating him like a dangerous animal instead of a developing person." "Because he is a dangerous animal," Dr. Stormwind had interjected, his 6 arms gesticulating wildly. "Razorback cubs have injured more researchers than any other species we work with. Their play behaviors involve activities that would require emergency medical intervention for most other life forms." "Their play behaviors," Hazel had said, consulting her personal notes with suspicious calm, "according to the literature I've reviewed, primarily involve environmental manipulation, construction activities using available materials, and social interaction through physical contact that establishes dominance hierarchies." She had paused, studying RB7 through our observation windows, where he was systematically disassembling his latest containment setup, with what appeared to be methodical engineering precision. "Has anyone tried giving him building materials, instead of trying to prevent him from building things?" The silence that followed could have been measured in geological epochs. "Building materials?" I had asked, though I suspected I already knew where this was heading and wouldn't like it. "Cardboard boxes," Hazel had said with the kind of matter-of-fact tone that preceded either brilliant breakthroughs or catastrophic disasters. "Human children love cardboard boxes. They build forts, create imaginary vehicles, construct entire fantasy worlds. It's one of the most universal play behaviors our species exhibits." Director Ironclad had stared at her with the expression of someone whose reality was being systematically deconstructed by impossible suggestions. "You want to give a Razorback cub cardboard boxes?" "I want to give him the tools to express his natural construction instincts in ways that don't involve destroying expensive equipment," Hazel had corrected. "Cardboard is cheap, safe, easily replaceable, and provides exactly the kind of manipulable building material that his species probably uses in natural environments." The first warning sign that Hazel's methods differed significantly from established protocols came when she requested removal of all restraint devices, monitoring equipment, and safety barriers from RB7's habitat. "Absolutely not," Director Ironclad had declared. "Those safety measures are the only thing preventing this facility from becoming a demolition zone." "Those safety measures are telling him that you expect him to be destructive," Hazel had replied, reviewing our incident reports with apparent interest. "He's meeting your expectations because that's what you've taught him his role is supposed to be." The second warning sign came when she requested direct, unsupervised access to RB7 in his primary habitat, without backup personnel or emergency intervention protocols. "That's not consultation," Dr. Stormwind had informed her, checking her request, "against our safety regulations. That's assisted suicide with scientific documentation." "That's respect," Hazel had corrected. "I'm going to treat him like an intelligent being capable of making choices about how he wants to interact, instead of like a problem that needs managing." The third warning sign was her complete dismissal of our comprehensive threat assessments, behavioral profiles, and species-specific aggression indicators. These files read like military intelligence briefings instead of child development reports, she had observed, sorting through documentation that represented months of careful analysis. Where are the play preference surveys? The creative expression assessments? The social interaction evaluations? "Razorback cubs don't have play preferences beyond destruction," Dr. Stormwind had explained with the patience of someone addressing a particularly naive student. "They don't engage in creative expression beyond territorial marking. Their social interactions are limited to dominance displays and resource competition." "According to whom?" Hazel had asked. "Because everything I'm reading here describes observations of stressed, isolated, possibly traumatized juveniles in artificial environments. Of course, they're acting out. They're bored, frustrated, and probably desperate for appropriate stimulation. Which brings us to today, and the moment when everything our facility thought it knew about apex predator psychology was about to be completely redefined by corrugated shipping materials. The interaction space Hazel had requested was RB7's primary habitat, modified according to her specifications to remove all equipment except basic environmental controls. She had asked maintenance to deliver exactly 17 cardboard boxes of various sizes, ranging from small containers suitable for tool storage to large shipping crates that could hold industrial equipment. I monitored the entire situation from our observation deck, surrounded by every medical team in the facility and enough emergency response equipment to handle a small war. Director Ironclad stood beside me, his stress colors cycling through approximately 30 different hues, as he watched our most experienced behavioral specialist walk into an apex predator's territory, carrying nothing more threatening than a clipboard. RB7 was positioned in the center of his habitat, systematically destroying what remained of his latest toy allocation, with the methodical efficiency of someone who had turned demolition into an art form. His armored plating gleamed under artificial lighting. His retractable spines clicked against each other in patterns that suggested significant agitation, and his overall demeanor indicated someone whose day had been personally ruined by the existence of objects that refused to break properly. Hazel entered the habitat with the casual confidence of someone attending a neighborhood barbecue instead of potentially becoming lunch for a creature whose species measured social interaction in terms of structural damage. "Hello, RB7, she said, her voice carrying the kind of warm friendliness that made experienced xenobiologists question their sanity. "I'm Hazel. I brought you some presents." RB7's head swiveled toward this impossible human with the focused attention of someone evaluating either a new threat or a particularly interesting chew toy. His spines extended slightly, his jaw opened to display impressive dental hardware, and his overall posture suggested he was calculating optimal attack vectors. Then Hazel did something that made every security officer in the facility reach for sedatives. She sat down on the floor and began unpacking cardboard boxes. "I thought you might like to build something," she continued, apparently oblivious to the fact that she was within easy striking distance of a creature whose casual movements could reduce her to constituent atoms. "Humans love building things. I figured maybe Razorbacks do too." She pulled out a medium-sized box, opened it with theatrical flair, and climbed inside. "See?" she said, her voice slightly muffled but clearly audible. "It's a fort, or a spaceship, or a secret hideout. It's whatever you want it to be." RB7 stared at this development with what could only be described as complete bewilderment. In 6 months of careful observation, we had never documented a Razorback cub displaying confusion that wasn't immediately followed by destructive violence. Hazel climbed out of her box, selected another one, and began demonstrating various construction possibilities. She showed how boxes could be stacked to create towers, connected to form tunnels, or modified to build elaborate structures limited only by imagination and available materials. "The best part," she explained, constructing what appeared to be a simple fort, "is that when you're done playing with one thing, you can take it apart and build something completely different." That's when RB7 did something unprecedented in the history of our facility. He approached the cardboard boxes with curiosity instead of aggression. Not the predatory stalking we had observed during feeding time. Not the territorial investigation he displayed when new equipment was introduced to his habitat. He moved with the cautious interest of someone who had just encountered something genuinely fascinating. Hazel stepped back, giving him space to examine the boxes while maintaining her encouraging commentary. "Take your time," she said. "There's no wrong way to play with them. Build whatever makes you happy." RB7 circled the largest box several times, his spines retracting as his aggressive posture relaxed into something approaching playful investigation. He touched the cardboard gently with one claw, testing its texture and structural properties. Then he did something that made our behavioral analysis computers crash from processing impossible data. He climbed inside the box. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. We could hear subtle movements, soft scratching sounds, and what might have been experimental vocalizations. Then RB7's head appeared over the edge of the box, and his expression had transformed completely. Gone was the constant aggression that had characterized every previous interaction. Gone was the territorial posturing that had defined his behavioral profile. Instead, he looked happy. "Good choice," Hazel said, settling beside his box with her own smaller container. "That's a great fort. Very defensible architecture, excellent sightlines, plenty of room for storage." RB7 made a sound that our translation systems couldn't interpret, but which definitely resembled something approaching laughter. And that's when he began to build. Every species failed to tame the apex predator's cub. Human did it with a cardboard box. Part 2. What RB7 constructed over the next hour redefined my understanding of Razorback intelligence, creativity, and apparently their secret passion for architecture that no xenobiologist had ever documented. Using his retractable spines with surgical precision, he began modifying the largest box by creating perfectly circular windows, decorative patterns that resembled geometric art, and structural reinforcements that would have impressed professional engineers. He stacked smaller boxes to create turrets, connected them with carefully torn cardboard bridges, and designed what appeared to be a multi-level fortress complete with defensive positions and storage areas. "Oh, wow," Hazel said, her voice carrying genuine admiration as she watched his construction project. "That's incredible. You're an architect. Did you design this yourself, or are you working from traditional Razorback building techniques?" RB7 paused in his construction to look at her, and for the first time since arriving at our facility, his expression suggested he was being treated like an individual rather than a behavioral problem requiring correction. He made a series of clicks and whistles that our translation systems struggled to process, eventually producing, "Build thing is fun making. Never had proper materials before. Always had to use metal breaking, plastic destroying. Cardboard is gentle building material." I stared at the translation display, convinced that our systems had malfunctioned. Did he just say he's never had appropriate building materials? Dr. Stormwind's 6 arms were performing what I recognized as his equivalent of a complete mental breakdown. Razorback cubs aren't supposed to have building preferences. They're supposed to destroy things instinctively. "Maybe," I suggested, watching RB7 carefully create decorative elements that served no functional purpose beyond aesthetics. They destroy inappropriate materials because they're trying to build with tools that aren't designed for construction. Hazel had apparently reached the same conclusion because she began offering RB7 additional boxes while making suggestions about structural improvements and design possibilities. "If you want to make the bridge stronger, you could fold this part like this," she demonstrated, showing him advanced cardboard engineering techniques that I didn't even know existed. "And if you need more height, these smaller boxes could be perfect for adding extra levels." RB7 accepted her suggestions with enthusiasm that bordered on reverence, implementing her modifications while adding his own improvements that demonstrated engineering instincts I was beginning to suspect his species had been hiding for millennia. "Hazel human understands building concepts," he said, his pronunciation improving rapidly as he continued working. "Other beings only understand breaking concepts, always wanting RB7 to stop making things, start breaking things instead." That's when the real crisis began, because RB7's transformation had attracted attention from sources far more dangerous than our research facility's administrative hierarchy. The emergency transmission arrived exactly 2 hours after Hazel's cardboard breakthrough, carrying authentication codes from the Galactic Military Procurement Division's Weapons Development Bureau. Colonel Thane Ironspike, a draconian male whose mechanical augmentations made him look like the unholy offspring of a tank and a nightmare, appeared on our main communication screen with the kind of expression that suggested our facility was about to become a testing ground for high-explosive ordnance. "Director Ironclad," he growled, his voice carrying the warm empathy of grinding metal, "you will cease all interaction experiments with the Razorback specimen immediately. Our weapons division requires the subject for combat conditioning protocols designed to maximize its destructive potential." Director Ironclad's stress colors shifted to shades that indicated his species was approaching complete system failure. "Colonel, the specimen has just achieved unprecedented behavioral stability through therapeutic intervention. Disrupting this progress could trigger catastrophic regression. The specimen's behavioral stability is irrelevant, Ironspike replied with the casual indifference of someone discussing industrial equipment. Razorback cubs represent the ultimate close combat weapons platform. We will condition it to respond to military commands and deploy it in active conflict zones. That's when Hazel did something that redefined my understanding of human courage, diplomacy, or complete lack of survival instincts. She activated the communication system from inside RB7's habitat. "Colonel Ironspike," she said, her voice carrying the kind of polite firmness that preceded either diplomatic breakthroughs or spectacular military disasters. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. RB7 is under the protection of Earth's Endangered Sentient Species Protocol, and we don't surrender sapient beings to weapons development programs." The silence that followed could have been used to calibrate atomic clocks. Colonel Ironspike's expression shifted from bureaucratic annoyance to the kind of focused rage that preceded planetary bombardments. "Who dares interfere with military procurement directives?" "Dr. Hazel Moonbeam," she replied cheerfully, apparently oblivious to the fact that she had just declared war on the galaxy's most aggressive military organization. "And I should mention that RB7 has just demonstrated advanced cognitive abilities, creative problem-solving skills, and architectural talent that qualifies him for protected sentient status under interstellar law." RB7 looked up from his construction project, his spines extending as he processed the conversation. "Military threat voice wants to make RB7 into weapon thing? They want to train you to fight in wars instead of letting you build beautiful things," Hazel explained. "But I won't let that happen. You're an artist, not a weapon." RB7's response was immediate and terrifying. His armored plating shifted to colors that made our threat assessment system scream warnings about imminent violence. His spines extended to full combat length. His jaw opened to display dental hardware designed for crushing starship hulls. But instead of attacking, he positioned himself protectively in front of Hazel and his cardboard fortress. "No one takes building friend away," he declared, his voice carrying the kind of absolute determination that made hardened military veterans reconsider their career choices. "No one destroys creation place." RB7 protects Hazel Human and Fort Home. Colonel Ironspike apparently decided that diplomatic pressure wasn't producing desired results, because his next transmission included tactical displays of the military fleet currently surrounding our research station. "You have 6 hours to surrender the specimen," he announced. "Failure to comply will result in facility seizure under Emergency Military Procurement Authority." Hazel studied the fleet deployment with the kind of calm analysis that suggested she had been expecting this development. "RB7, how would you feel about taking a field trip? Hazel Human wishes to flee travel from bad military beings?" "Hazel Human wishes to show you Earth," she replied. "Meet my family, see how humans build things, maybe demonstrate to the galaxy that Razorback cubs make better architects than weapons." RB7's enthusiasm was immediate and overwhelming. "Earthworld visit. Human building techniques learning. Yes." RB7 accepts adventure invitation with great excitement. Hazel activated her personal communication device with practiced efficiency. "Emergency extraction request to Terra Defense Command. Endangered Species Protection Protocol, immediate evacuation required, hostile military forces present." The response came within minutes, and it made Colonel Ironspike's fleet look like a collection of antique toys. Earth's diplomatic extraction vessel emerged from hyperspace with technology so advanced it made our best scientists weep with professional envy. The ship was elegant, impossibly fast, and carried defensive systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Dr. Moonbeam," came the transmission from the extraction vessel. "Terra Command has authenticated your endangered species protection request. Preparing for emergency evacuation of all protected individuals and their essential belongings." Colonel Ironspike's fleet attempted to prevent the evacuation and discovered why Earth had never lost a diplomatic mission in 4 centuries of interstellar relations. Their weapons simply couldn't target something that existed in 17 different dimensional phases at once. "Impossible!" Ironspike snarled as his targeting systems failed spectacularly. "No civilization possesses defensive technology that advanced." "Colonel," Hazel said as she and RB7 prepared their cardboard fortress for transport. "You're about to learn why humans don't build the biggest weapons in the galaxy. We build the most creative solutions." The extraction process took exactly 93 seconds. One moment they were in our research facility, the next they were aboard a ship that promptly vanished into hyperspace with technology that made our dimensional physics textbooks obsolete. But Hazel's revolution was just beginning. 6 weeks later, I received an invitation that redefined my understanding of interstellar architecture and artistic achievement. The Galactic Council had scheduled an emergency session to address what they termed unprecedented developments in Razorback cognitive capabilities and cultural contributions. Hazel and RB7 appeared before the full council assembly, representing not just their own interests, but an entirely new understanding of what apex predator species could accomplish when given appropriate materials and encouragement. "Honored council members," Hazel began, standing confidently beside a display of RB7's architectural achievements. "We're here to present evidence that Razorback cubs aren't weapons waiting for activation. They're artists waiting for canvas." The presentation that followed lasted 4 hours and revolutionized xenobiological understanding of 12 different apex predator species. RB7 had spent his time on Earth working with human architects, engineers, and artists to develop construction techniques that combined Razorback strength with human creativity. His designs had solved engineering problems that had puzzled Earth's best minds for decades, while his artistic vision had created sculptures that were being displayed in museums throughout human space. "Building making is species joy for Razorback people," RB7 testified, his galactic standard now flawless and his confidence absolute. "Always forced to destroy things because no one provided creation materials. Cardboard gifts from Hazel humans showed true nature possibilities." The council voted unanimously to reclassify Razorback cubs as protected artistic entities rather than dangerous predator specimens, establishing legal frameworks that guaranteed their right to creative education instead of military conditioning. But the most significant outcome was the establishment of the Universal Creative Materials Program, which provided construction supplies, art materials, and engineering tools to apex predator species throughout the galaxy. The results were extraordinary. Within 6 months, species that had been classified as irredeemably violent were producing architecture, sculpture, music, and literature that enriched galactic culture immeasurably. The program's success led to the Complete Predator Reclassification Act, which recognized that apex predator species weren't evolutionary mistakes that needed controlling, but potential contributors to civilization who had been systematically denied appropriate outlets for their natural capabilities. RB7 became Earth's first Razorback cultural ambassador, establishing art schools on 17 different worlds while teaching both human and alien children that creativity was more powerful than destruction. 2 years after the cardboard breakthrough, he opened the galaxy's first interspecies architecture academy, where young beings from dozens of species learned to build together instead of fighting each other. Colonel Ironspike, incidentally, was reassigned to inventory management after his weapons procurement program was disbanded in favor of creative development initiatives that produced better results than military conditioning. I watched RB7 address the Academy's first graduating class, speaking to young beings from 43 different species who had learned that their natural abilities could create beauty instead of chaos. "Every being has building dreams inside," he told them, standing before a magnificent cardboard cathedral he had constructed as their graduation ceremony backdrop. "Just need proper materials and encouragement, friends, to help dreams become real things." The galaxy had learned that the most dangerous assumption wasn't that apex predators were violent, but that violence was their only option. Hazel had proven that humans possessed something no other species had mastered: the ability to see creative potential in beings that everyone else viewed as problems requiring solutions. RB7 had taught the galaxy that the strongest beings could choose to build rather than break, create rather than destroy, inspire rather than intimidate. And it all began with one human who looked at an untamable apex predator cub and saw an architect who just needed the right building materials. Sometimes the most powerful weapons in the universe aren't energy cannons or plasma torpedoes. Sometimes they're cardboard boxes and the revolutionary belief that everyone deserves the chance to create something beautiful. In a cosmos full of destroyers, Hazel had proven that humans were the ultimate builders, capable of seeing construction possibilities in any being willing to trade demolition for development. The laughter had stopped the moment RB7 built his first cardboard fort. What replaced it was the understanding that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy wasn't a creature designed for destruction. It was a creature who had been given the tools to build something better. But the universe, being the cosmic comedian it is, wasn't finished testing our assumptions about impossible human achievements. 3 months after RB7's graduation ceremony, we received another transmission that made our previous crises look like routine administrative tasks. This message came from the Shadowmere Maximum Security Facility, the galaxy's most notorious prison for apex predator criminals. The communication was addressed specifically to Dr. Hazel Moonbeam, and its contents made Director Ironclad reach for emergency sedatives. Human friend Hazel, the transmission began in broken galactic standard mixed with multiple apex predator dialects. This is Grimclaw of the Thornback clans. We are 46 imprisoned builders whose creation dreams were called destruction crimes. We hear stories of cardboard magic and RB7's freedom building. We request hope materials? I watched Hazel's expression transform from curiosity to determination as she processed this information. 46 imprisoned apex predators who describe themselves as builders rather than destroyers. Absolutely not, Director Ironclad declared before anyone could respond. Shadowmere houses the most violent criminals in known space. These aren't misunderstood artists. These are convicted killers. These are beings whose construction instincts were criminalized because nobody understood what they were trying to build, Hazel corrected, studying the transmission data with the focused attention she brought to every impossible situation. Look at their crime descriptions: property damage during territorial disputes, unauthorized structural modifications to urban areas, destruction of corporate facilities that violated traditional building grounds. RB7, who had been visiting our facility to demonstrate his latest architectural innovations, approached the communication station with interest. Thornback people are master stone shapers. Grimclaw name suggests elder builder status. If imprisoned for building crimes, then legal system misunderstood species nature again. They're in maximum security prison, Dr. Stormwind protested, his 6 arms gesticulating wildly. You can't just ship building supplies to incarcerated apex predators and hope for the best. I can request a consultation visit to assess their creative rehabilitation potential, Hazel replied, activating her communication system. If these beings are builders rather than destroyers, they deserve the same opportunities RB7 received. The bureaucratic battle that followed lasted 2 weeks and required intervention from Earth's diplomatic corps, 3 separate civil rights organizations, and a legal precedent that nobody had expected to use involving artistic expression rights for incarcerated individuals. Hazel's eventual visit to Shadowmere facility became the most heavily monitored consultation in prison history, with security teams from 4 different species and enough defensive equipment to repel a small invasion. What she found challenged every assumption our justice systems had made about apex predator criminal behavior. The 46 imprisoned beings weren't hardened killers who had chosen violence over civilized behavior. They were frustrated architects whose natural construction instincts had been systematically misunderstood by legal systems that classified all unauthorized building as destruction of property. Grimclaw himself was a master stone sculptor whose crimes included creating unauthorized monuments in public spaces, modifying buildings to improve their structural integrity without permits, and defending traditional construction sites from corporate development. Human friend understands building soul, he told Hazel during their first meeting, his massive claws delicately shaping clay she had brought as demonstration material. All life, Grimclaw builds beauty things. Legal system calls beauty things property damage and unauthorized modification and criminal destruction. The sculptures he created during their conversation revealed artistic sophistication that belonged in galleries rather than prison cells. His fellow inmates demonstrated similar talents. A Razorclaw who specialized in metallurgical art. A Void Hunter whose shadow shaping created architectural marvels. A Crystalback whose mineral formations solved engineering problems that had puzzled scientists for decades. Hazel's report to the Galactic Justice Department triggered the largest criminal justice reform in interstellar history. Not only were building-related charges dropped for species demonstrating artistic intent, but investigations revealed systematic persecution of constructor species whose territorial modifications had been deliberately misclassified as criminal vandalism. The Universal Creative Rehabilitation Program that followed became the galaxy's most successful criminal justice initiative. Instead of punishment-based corrections, apex predator inmates received construction materials, artistic training, and opportunities to demonstrate that their natural abilities could serve society rather than threaten it. The recidivism rate dropped to virtually zero because beings who had found appropriate creative outlets had no reason to return to destructive behaviors that had never satisfied their actual psychological needs. Grimclaw became the program's first graduate and most effective advocate, establishing construction cooperatives that employed former inmates in legitimate building projects throughout the galaxy. His architectural designs revolutionized urban planning on 17 different worlds. Building dreams cannot be imprisoned, he testified before the Galactic Justice Reform Committee. Can only be redirected toward creation or misdirected toward destruction. Human friend Hazel teaches galaxy truth. Every being needs proper materials for soul expression. The success of the rehabilitation program inspired the Complete Criminal Justice Transformation Act, which recognized that most apex predator crimes stemmed from frustrated natural instincts rather than inherent antisocial tendencies. Prisons became creative rehabilitation centers. Punishment became education. Criminals became students learning to express their abilities positively rather than destructively. 5 years after the cardboard breakthrough, I attended the first Galactic Builders Festival, where former criminals, reformed military weapons, and converted research specimens demonstrated that the galaxy's most dangerous beings had become its most creative contributors. RB7 served as festival coordinator. His childhood cardboard fort, now preserved in the Museum of Transformative Moments, as the beginning of a revolution that had reshaped galactic civilization. Cardboard gift taught important lesson, he said during his opening ceremony speech. Every being has building nature inside, just needs someone to provide proper materials and believe in creation possibilities instead of destruction fears. Hazel had revolutionized how the galaxy understood apex predators, criminal justice, and the transformative power of appropriate creative outlets. Her simple solution had proven that the most complex social problems often required the simplest interventions. But perhaps most importantly, she had demonstrated that humans possessed something no other species had mastered: the ability to see artistic potential in beings that everyone else viewed as irredeemable threats. The cardboard boxes had been just the beginning. What followed was proof that the strongest force in the universe wasn't military might or technological superiority. It was the revolutionary belief that everyone deserved the chance to create something beautiful, regardless of what biology had designed them to destroy.